Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you to all of the guests who have tuned in to join me today. It means a lot. I really appreciate that. And when I was asked to share something with this group, I wasn't quite sure what to speak about. And thank you to you, Andrea, and to Hoshila for encouraging me to share the personal trauma that I've been through, and in the hopes that it might be able to influence somebody else who might be grappling with similar challenges, particularly a solitary type of lifestyle, which was a conscious decision which I made to embark upon. But also feelings of loneliness and loss, which, as you correctly mentioned, can affect us sometimes much later than the moment of encounter. So I selected to use images from the tarot because I'd mentioned also in my little blurb that I'm interested in mysticism, and I don't know how many people know this about me, but I am actually a tarot reader. I don't read cards for other people necessarily, unless you would request that, but I read the cards for myself. And I've got numerous decks of tarot, and it took a lot of convincing to my family that if ever they traveled to other countries in the world, they needed to try and find an original deck of tarot cards, if it was possible, which was newly illustrated. And this image, which I used in my flyer or on this first slide, titled "The Hermit," is a more modern rendition of a sort of social archetype, which is usually portrayed more as sort of being some sort of wise sage, usually with cloak and robe. But I will show you an image of a different hermit tarot card a bit later in the talk. So cartomancy is fortune telling or divination using a deck of cards. Forms of cartomancy appeared soon after playing cards were first introduced into Europe in the 14th century. Practitioners of cartomancy are generally known as cartomancers, card readers, or simply readers. The earliest evidence of a tarot deck used for cartomancy comes from an anonymous manuscript from around 1750, which documents rudimentary divinatory meanings for the cards of the Tarocco Bolognese. The rich variety of symbols engages the person who seeks such self-help into a contemplation of his or her own development as a person, and through the divination of the cards to look at their past, their present, and their possible futures. I chose to draw attention to this card as it captures what my colleague Mark Brandt introduced to me recently as possibly my hexeity, or personal essence, or current properties of being. And the term hexeity is also coming from medieval and Renaissance European philosophy. So I'd like to begin by doing a little bit of a dramatic reading, a reading from 1913, a letter from Opensky on the symbolism of this tarot of the hermit. He says, "After long wanderings over a sandy, waterless desert where only serpents lived, I met the hermit. He was wrapped in a long cloak, a hood thrown over his head. He held a long staff in one hand, and in the other a lighted lantern, though it was broad daylight and the sun was shining. The lantern of Hermes Trismegistus, said the voice. This is higher knowledge, that inner knowledge which illuminates in a new way even what appears to be already clearly known. This lantern lights up the past, the present, and the future for the hermit, and opens the souls of people and the most intimate recesses of their hearts. The cloak of Apollonius is the faculty of the wise man by which he isolates himself, even amidst a noisy crowd. It is his skill in hiding his mysteries, even while expressing them, his capacity for silence, and his power to act in stillness. The staff of wisdom is his inner authority, his power, his self-confidence. The lantern, the cloak, and the staff are three symbols of the initiation of a magus. They are needed to guide souls past the temptation of illusory fires by the roadside, so that they may go straight to the higher goal. He who receives these three symbols or aspires to obtain them strives to enrich himself with all that he can acquire, not for himself, but like God, to delight in the joy of giving. The giving virtue is the basis of a hermit's life. In medieval and ancient philosophy, the wheel of fortune, or rota fortuna, is a symbol of the capricious nature of fate. The wheel belongs to the goddess Fortuna, who spins it at random supposedly. Sometimes she's also depicted blindfolded, changing the positions of those on the wheel. Some suffer great misfortune, others gain windfalls. The metaphor was already a cliché in ancient times, complained about by Tacitus, but was greatly popularized for the Middle Ages by its extended treatment in the Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius from around 520. And Boethius was also a very significant philosopher and scholar in music theory, and I've read a lot of Boethius's codices, which is why I've decided to draw on European medieval and Renaissance philosophy. It became a common image in the manuscripts of the book and then other media, where Fortuna, often blindfolded, turns a large wheel of swords used in watermills, to which kings and other powerful figures are attached. The wheel was widely used as an allegory in medieval literature and art to aid religious instruction. Though classically fortune's wheels could be favorable and disadvantage, medieval writers preferred to concentrate on the tragic aspect, dwelling on the downfall of the mighty, serving to remind people of the temporality of earthly things and the fact that life can change very quickly or very slowly, but that change is inevitable, but also ineffable. Sometimes there are no answers to the question, why did this happen to us, or why did this happen to me? And so I'd like to do a reading from Carmina Burana, another famous text on the tale of fortune. And you might recognize this music. Carmina Burana was also set by the composer Karl Orff, and is usually played at sports matches or used as incidental music in action or horror films. But the reading from the Carmina Burana Codex says, O fortuna velet luna, statu variabilis semper crisis, aute crisis, vita detestabilis, nunc obdurat, et tunc curat, ludo mentes assiem, ege statem, potestatem, dissolvet ut glacium. O fortune, like the moon, you are changeable, ever waxing, ever waning. Hateful life first oppresses and then soothes, playing with mental clarity, poverty, and power. It melts them like ice. I was fortunate, and that's why I used the word, I did that introduction to Fortuna. I was fortunate enough to be blessed with music, my own mirror to life. Where did it come from and where was I going? Similarly, this question about music, the ineffable qualities of music, that is not being able to articulate into words the mysteries encapsulated within music, the ideas and thoughts gnawed at me, why did I have music? And where did the music come from? And where did the music go? So I want you all to recognize what you are drawn to and what draws you closer to yourself. In this instance, it was music for me, but for you it may be fashion or visual art or creative writing or gardening. You will find reflection in the things that make you come alive. Who are you and where do you draw your strength from? As a young boy, I grew up in a church where we sang a hymn with the following lines. It says, quote, "Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too." End quote. And these words forever affected me, and I recognized my role within my church at that time as a musical director and organist as a form of servanthood. My talent or gift of music was recognized, celebrated, and required by those people who worshipped alongside me, and I had an integral function in my community as a musician. This included youth development through initiatives such as running community choirs, participating in cultural bands, and providing incidental music at significant life events such as marriages or funerals for hundreds of families. My gift of music had a purpose, and it shaped my identity and my relations to other people. But I recognized that the gift of music I possessed was not common in society, and while other young people around me were more inclined to want to play sports or socialize or explore their intrapersonal identities via groups of friends, I preferred instead to sit quietly at my piano, the greatest material gift I ever received, my vehicle through which I could transport myself to the metaphysical realm where music lived. And I want to thank, I see my first piano teacher, Brenda Matthews. She's joined me on this talk today. Brenda, you were very influential in that moment with me, starting to tap into the metaphysical qualities of music already at that young age when I was just starting. So in my quest to go deeper into the music and mysteries, I had to leave my community who blessed me on my way, as one does with an initiate of all kinds. And Fortuna and La Musica set me on my path that took me from Cape Town to Atlanta and Philadelphia in the United States, then to Pretoria, and now I'm in Port Elizabeth. Along the way, I met some of the most influential people in my life, and through this journey, I learned that the Magus is a mentor. In order to find wisdom, I had to travel. In order to learn, I needed to sit with masters, and in order to teach, I needed students. And I love this slide because it's a little small example of what my journey has been as a Hierophant. A Hierophant is another tarot deck card, which means the teacher or the counselor or the wise one, the way shower. I found that on my journey of going to pursue the quest of the life of the mind, I was able to find again where I was able to draw strength. And it was primarily from various teachers, and also then the ability to be a teacher to others. And these are some of the significant moments that I've had, teachers in America, and then me also returning to South Africa and engaging with other teachers, and then becoming a mentor to students myself. And so I love this quote which says, "Good people are like candles, they burn themselves up to give others light." Now this is another tarot card called the Tower. And the Tower is commonly interpreted as meaning danger, crisis, destruction, and liberation. It's associated with a sudden, unforeseen change. And in March 2020 this year, our lives were forever changed here in South Africa, and so too in the rest of the world. I'm referring, of course, to what happened with the onslaught of the epidemic in China, spreading to become a global pandemic, and the start of our lockdown. Now at that stage I didn't know what was happening around me, and I hadn't encountered a lockdown before, and I'd only heard from people, my elders who lived under apartheid, that there were situations of lockdown, states of emergency. But in my early life, and I'm only in my mid-30s now, I didn't experience a lockdown before, so it was quite a shocking experience. But I also, having now been interested in the metaphysical, also then tapped into a lot of what we call occult knowledge. And occult doesn't only mean superstitious, the word occult means hidden. And that allowed me to also become more familiar with conspiracy theories in the world. And for a long time, when the pandemic just started reaching South Africa's shores, I think I was still a conspiracy theorist, thinking, is there some nefarious agenda to this virus? Is it the way that they're going to get the microchips in all of us? But nevertheless, that soon changed. A dramatic reading for this slide from the second book of Ehs by John Dowland, written in the 15th century. Flow, my tears, fall from your springs. Exiled forever, let me mourn. Where night's black bird her sad infamy sings, there let me live forlorn. Down, vain lights, shine you no more, no nights are dark enough for those that in despair their last fortunes deplore. Light doth but shame disclose. Hark, you shadows that in darkness dwell, learn to contemn light. Happy, happy, they that in hell feel not the world's despite. And I use this image of a skeleton showing its form in a position of prayer because after the crisis hit me, with COVID reaching my own personal family, I found myself praying like I never did before. And it started primarily when I received a call to let me know that my sister, Carmen, who you see in this image, was taken up in hospital and was first put on high flow oxygen and then ventilated and was unconscious. A moment of crisis and a wound to allow the light to flow in and out. A reading from my private journal, 26 July 2020. My dear sister, I praise God for the life that He has given you, even though you are still with us at this time. I've come to realize how precious life is and just how quickly it can be taken away. And whether we live or whether we die, we are united in spirit. Our souls are forever changed because of the encounters we have already had, and I pray that there might be many more days and yet years ahead of you. Today, that was on 26 July, marks day 14 of you being ventilated, receiving the highest possible care in the surgical intensive care unit at Vincent Pallotti Hospital. It has been an excruciating 2 weeks, knowing that your life hangs in the balance, that the silver cord might be broken at any moment. We as family have been overwhelmed with the love and prayers sent to us and made on our and your behalf. We seem to be in a moment of not knowing right now. There has been very little information from the doctors coming to us about your condition or progress. I continue to cling to hope. It has not been easy, nor is the battle that you are currently fighting. I am at a loss for words. My heart can't bear the agony of waiting for a call that tells me you've pulled through or you've passed on. And now my sister ended up being ventilated, in fact, for 4 weeks. And I can tell you it was the worst month of my life, not knowing that you could get a call at any moment to tell you she's no longer with us. My sister made a miraculous recovery after 4 weeks of being ventilated. She had to go through various types of physical therapy and speech therapy again to gain her faculties and her strength. But others whom I also loved were not spared. I love this picture on this slide because I think it's useful to let you know that the woman who's taken the picture is my sister after she's made her recovery. But while she was hospitalized, we lost various family members. And I'd like to read their names, if you would allow me to do that, and call them to remembrance with a brief moment of silence. Holtzman, Peggy Flundorp, Brian Isaacs, I remember you. And it was a very, very painful experience over the months of July and August, starting already towards the end of June, when all of this started happening and we were approaching our peak crisis moment in South Africa. So not only was my sister ventilated, unconscious, able to perish at any moment, but I was also losing loved ones simultaneously while that incident was occurring, of dealing with the trauma of a loved one incapacitated. Now I want to return in closing to this idea of the hermit. And I've deliberately put the second tarot card in reverse. For coming back to the reading of the cards or the divination, the way that a card is read is also significant. An upright card is interpreted differently to a reversed card, and it depends on whether you shuffle the cards in the deck and whichever way you draw it and place it on the table, whether it's upright or reverse, the meaning changes. Now, I spoke about the hermit being initiate of the magus. The magus is an aspiring magician, and it's usually seen as a sort of noble light shower, somebody who's gone on a path, on some sort of quest, to show others that I am in this with you. But when the hermit is reversed, the hermit is a symbol or signal of loneliness, despair, and isolation. And I saw myself shifting from my identity as a hermit, primarily as somebody in pursuit of wanting to be the sage, to then starting to grapple with immense feelings of isolation and loneliness, and particularly because I was locked down. And that came through a grief now of having developed as a hierophant, as a teacher to my students, and I recognized that not only was I losing loved ones, but that my students themselves were my loved ones. I was in intense grief for not being able to do the work that I came to this planet to do, which was to work with students. And even to this day, I'm still not manifesting that dream fully, and it's been lost since COVID-19 hit me. I've not had meaningful interaction with my students, and a lot of my identity was wrapped up in that, and I find myself at this present moment signaling to myself that the hermit lies in reverse, struggling with loss, loneliness, and isolation. But I do want to, in closing, read this piece of motivation to you for any of you who might be struggling with feelings of loss or loneliness. A reading titled The Lone Wolf, from teachings from the group called Fearless Motivation. The wolf on the top of the hill is never as hungry as the wolf climbing the hill. It's not easy going it alone. But if you keep going, stay true to yourself, it will be worth it in the end. The hardest walk you can make is the walk you make alone, but that is the walk that makes you the strongest. That is the walk that builds your character the most. To all of you fighting battles alone, to all of you going against the grain, battling the naysayers, stay strong, keep going. This walk is hard. But the hardest walks lead to the greatest destinations. The toughest climbs always lead to the best views. It will be worth it in the end. And if you show what you are made of, the right people will show up in your life. You won't be a lone wolf forever. You have qualities only few can admire because most don't possess. You have strength only few can understand because most have never experienced. So don't give in, don't settle, don't lower your expectations to fit into the world. You were born to stand out. You were born to lead the pack. They say the wolf on the hill is never as hungry as the wolf climbing the hill, always be that wolf climbing the hill, always hungry for more, always hungry to grow, to feed your mind and to rise to the highest level you can take yourself, never looking back, always looking forward to the next feast, the feast of success in whatever you do. It doesn't matter if you have to walk alone for a while. It is much better to walk alone in the right direction than to follow the herd walking in the wrong direction. Stay strong, be different, and I will add, think different. And some of you might recognize this song from the musical Annie. I've come to play this song to myself so much. I think you can go and Google it if you don't know it. It's an absolutely beautiful one. But a little bit of joy and upliftment, because having come out of the eye of the storm, I know that better days lie ahead for me, even while I'm still grappling with the various types of grief that I carry. And I say to you all, breathe in light, exhale love. Thank you very much.